Please join me in welcoming Owl Labs CEO, Frank Sept.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time zone you may be in. So my name is Frank Sept, CEO of Owl Labs, a company that was really founded on the idea of building technology to support remote work by focusing on the remote experience and the remote worker experience. Experience is a key word that we'll come back to throughout the presentation today, and you'll be experiencing a meeting as a remote person coming into a conference room for the majority of today. So we're really honored that you would spend time with us today, and we plan to make it impactful. So given the incredible changes that we've seen in the workplace over the past, call it 2.5 years, today is really an opportunity for us to talk about and quite frankly showcase how to make hybrid work with the focus on the remote participant. We believe that it starts with technology, and we're excited to introduce you to it today. So before we get started, let's do some introductions for what will be the first session of today, and I'll start by bringing Ashley in. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Carr, and I lead marketing here at Owl Labs. I'm based in the Boston area, so I'm lucky enough to come into this great office, usually two to 3 days a week. So I will kick it to Max.
Hello, everybody. My name is Max McKeeve. I'm one of the co-founders of Owl Labs. We've been at it for about 8 years now. I split my time between New Hampshire, Boston, and Somerville, which is a town just outside of Boston.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beth Tuck, and I'm a group product manager here at Owl Labs. And I split my time between the suburbs, about 25 minutes from Boston, and then our Boston and our Somerville office.
And hey, I'm Stuart Collingwood, and I head up the European business for Owl, based here in London, England. Occasionally, I get to visit Boston, beautiful place, and spend a lot of time on the road.
Great. Thanks, Stuart. As I said earlier, Owl Labs is a company that was founded on the concept of, live where you want, work where you want. And it was founded well before the pandemic when everything changed and that just became a fact. So in the early stages of the pandemic, everybody was on equal footing. We were all in our Brady Bunch boxes, and I hope that's not a reference that is incredibly dated. If it is, please don't tell me. But now some people are in the office and some people are at home, which creates a significant disadvantage for those that are remote. And we really believe that technology can help equalize the playing field. Given almost all, and in some cases all, of your meetings will include at least one remote participant going forward, it's a problem that really needs to be solved. So with that, let's dive right into the meat of why you're here, which is to learn more about how to tackle remote work and our technology in particular. And with that, I'll turn it over to Beth.
Thanks, Frank. So today I am really excited to introduce to you the newest product that we have, our Meeting Owl 3, and you can see it here. We're not streaming using this one. I'm just going to talk to it a little bit. But we're really excited to share this new product because of the enhanced attention system and also a new concentrated audio experience that we have. So, as Frank said, it's very, very rare these days that you're in a meeting where everybody is always in the room, and throughout the day, there's usually one person who isn't in the room. And the whole idea behind the Owl is that, we want to make the people who are not in the room feel just like they're part of that in-room experience. So the Owl is basically a solution that solves that issue. It's an all-in-one 360 camera, microphone, and speaker system. And it uses AI and it uses motion to be able to detect the participants in the room and focus on the active conversation, because that's what's important. It's the conversation and the voices that are carrying on. So today we're going to talk about kind of those pieces of the system. Before we get into it, it's really easy to set up, and we'll talk more in depth about it, but it's simply just one USB-C cable to the Meeting Owl 3. it goes to your computer and then you plug it into power and you're pretty much ready to go. Okay, so let's dive into it further. So right here on our owl, you'll notice the camera on the top. And on the top of the system is a patented 1080p 360-degree fisheye lens camera. And this means that you get a full view of everything in the room. So if you look at the top of your screen, you'll notice that we have a full 360-degree view. And that means you can see everybody in the room. You can see Ashley and Frank and Max and myself. And for those who are not in the room, it's great to be able to see exactly what's going on. And then we dedicate the rest of the stage to those active participants. So a maximum of 3 people you'll see on the stage. And as you saw in our introductions, you can see how that switches between who has that main stage. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the camera. Now let's go on to the audio system. So there's 2 parts of the audio system, right? There are the speakers and the microphones. And the speakers are really to benefit the folks in the room because we want to hear what remote people have to say. And the microphones are to be able to benefit those remote participants. So in the system, we have 8 omnidirectional microphones that are located kind of towards the top of the system so that you can pick up all the voices that are in the room. And the pickup range on that is up to 18 feet. So we'll talk a little more about kind of the dimensions in the room that we're in a bit, but this table, more than the owl pretty much has no problem picking up this table with that 18-foot pickup radius. And the AI in the system can pick up to 10 feet. So it's able to focus on folks who are up to 10 feet away. And then we also have 3 speakers. So the speakers are located towards the bottom of the system. And that allows folks in the room to have a very clear representation of the people who are not in the room. Now, one other thing that we're really excited to introduce with the Meeting Owl 3 is our expansion microphone. So this little microphone puck that we have here, and I like to say that it helps cover a longer table. So let's say that, Frank was at the end of the table and we wanted to pick up his voice better. Maybe he was a quieter speaker. He's not, but maybe he was a quieter speaker. Maybe it's for folks who, are just spaced out. This is the perfect accessory to pick up voices and add another 8 feet of audio pickup to your system. And it attaches very simply using a custom micro HDMI connection from the system right to the owl. And I guess one other really nice benefit of the expansion microphone is the mute button. So oftentimes, if you just need to have a quick conversation in the room, you can push mute on the system or on your expansion mic and then unmute it. Just the same as that you can control the volume and the mute right from your owl as well. Okay, so those are kind of the camera, the microphones, and the speakers. Now let's talk about the brains of the system. So we like to call that our owl intelligence system. And basically by using all of those sensors, we're able to, hear and see and look at motion and be able to concentrate on the person who's speaking. And the engineers have worked really hard trying to, get this to where it is today. We've made a lot of improvements. And I like to say it's just as much of a science as it is an art form because it takes a lot to tune it. Because those folks who aren't in the room, they don't want to see a jagged cut to somebody. They want to see kind of a smooth transition from one person to the next. So that's what we've worked really hard on. So in regards to improvements, I think the best way to talk about them was to kind of go around the room. So Max, maybe you could talk about the first improvement.
Sure. This one is one of my favorites in the Meeting Owl 3 product, which is the detection accuracy. Now, you can imagine that the value that we deliver to our customers, we have over 100,000 of those across the world at this point, is the ability to reliably detect the people who are speaking and ignore everything that is not relevant to the conversation at that point of time. All of that in service to the viewing pleasure and benefit of the remote person. So we've actually improved the detection accuracy by 58% from the 2nd generation to this 3rd generation. And that's a really exciting improvement that is going to serve you and your teams quite well in your future meetings. Maybe Frank, you can talk a little bit about one of your favorite improvements in the Meeting Owl 3.
Yeah, so as a remote participant, you want to make sure that you are a part of an active discussion. And as the speaker changes, you want to make sure that you're keeping up with the conversation as a remote user, and the OWL helps you do that. And this generation of the OWL actually focuses on active speakers and recognizes active speakers 4 times faster.
And one of the other really interesting things that the new version of the Meeting Owl has is some improvements to the stage view. So the new version actually dedicates about 98% of the area to faces versus around 92% previously. And for those that have seen the previous version as well, we've made some design improvements, which, you know, marketing person, I love that. We've got the black lines that are much crisper and cleaner, some new updated icons as well. So just giving it a little facelift as we continue to improve over time.
Yeah, and thank you, Ashley. So those are some of the features, but we have a lot more that we can talk about later in the presentation today. One thing I should mention is the size of this room for anybody who might be curious on the call. This room is 16 feet by 18 feet, which is roughly 5 by 5.5 meters. And so as you can tell, the Meeting Owl is picking us up quite nicely. And the table we're seated around is about 14 feet in length, which, checking my notes, is about 4.3 meters. So I imagine that from your point of view, this is a quite comfortable experience. You're able to see and engage. Well, you can certainly see every one of us as we pass the conversation from person to person in this room. We recommend that the people that are seated in the room are about 3 to 10 feet away from the Meeting Owl for the optimal experience, but it actually works quite nicely in larger spaces. You can kind of give it a try yourself and see what works best for you. And with regards to audio pickup, this product does an amazing job with providing 18 feet or about 5.5 meters of audio pickup radius. So great audio, great video, and great performance to help your remote people feel better engaged. Later on today, we'll talk about a few additional features beyond the extension microphone, which includes a feature of the product we call Owl Connect, which is the ability to connect multiple owls together to cover even bigger spaces. You can extend that audio and the video, the microphone pickup, the speakers wirelessly to cover that bigger room in your organization and deliver that inclusive meeting experience for the comfort of your distributed team members. So those are the big highlights, and we'll go into those in more detail later today.
Thanks, Max. I think one other thing that I'd like to mention is that the Owl gets smarter over time. So we're constantly adding new features and new updates to the product. So you can enable those manually if you choose. You can keep your Owl connected to Wi-Fi overnight, and the updates will just automatically come as they're available. So, you know, we're always kind of just listening and seeing how the world is changing and constantly evolving the product. So with that, I think we'll have a little fun here, and we'll do a live demonstration of just some of the kind of the camera features in the product. Just so folks know, we have different versions of our app. We have one that works on iOS, we have one that works on Android, and we have a desktop app version that we introduced just this year. And within those apps, you can set settings persistently, meaning you can set it once and you can leave it just forever, or you can set them by meeting, because we know that some people, when they come into the room, they just have different preferences or different needs. So those are all kind of like by feature, easily available in the app, and we thought we'd demonstrate a few of those right now. So the first one, Ashley's gonna use an iPad actually to make changes. She's going to just demonstrate how we turn the piano on and off. So sometimes you might not want the piano strip. It might be that you have just 3 folks in the room and everybody, you know, you want to have a place for them on the stage, or maybe there's 2 folks in the room. But especially with, you know, larger meetings, here of us, there are 4, but there might be more. The piano on might be your preference. So it's very easy to just turn that on, turn that off, and you're good to go. The second thing to demonstrate is camera lock and zoom. And let's say that there's just one person who's talking. Maybe it's a teacher or it's a main speaker in the presentation. And let's see who we're gonna focus on today.
There we go.
It looks like Max.
Oh, this is branded, huh?
How about
Of
you
course.
guys?
What company do you work for?
So let's say you can turn the owl into just a PTZ camera. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you know, whether he wants us to look at his coffee cup, or, you know, maybe you're in a science class, or maybe you have a new prototype you want to share with somebody. It's very easy to just focus in on that. Okay, and there's one other thing that we'll share now, and we'll share a few more features later, which is Ignore Zone. And, you know, the owl is smart, but sometimes there are distractions in the room. So for example, you know, many rooms have large monitors or TVs to allow the in-room participants to see everything. Sometimes there might be a doorway, or a whiteboard, or just kind of an odd audio place in the room. We've even seen portraits on the walls, and sometimes the owl will think that that's a person. So you can easily set an ignore zone. Let's see who we might want to ignore at this moment.
I ignored Beth just because she was talking. So you could see she's been talking this whole time, but it didn't actually show her up on the screen. But maybe just we'll ignore Frank over here. Sorry. my
As a given.
backwards. Yep. Bye, Frank.
Bye.
See you later. And then just like that, we can say goodbye to our fearless CEO here.
That's great. And you can see how, you know, since we're not ignoring the screen, sometimes the screen might pop back in. But now we will be setting the ignore zone once again, and you can kind of see a grayed out area on the panel strip, so you can tell exactly where we set that. How does it feel to be back in the meeting, Frank?
Now I'm really active back in, and I'll express my disappointment by being ignored later on. So
And we feel that that's just it's a great tool for folks to have, especially when they're in a room and they want to concentrate on the conversation. So with that, you know, we're starting to just share with you some of the features that are available. The whole idea of the meeting owl is, you know, as automatic as it can be, it really just focuses on that conversation that's happening in the room. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
Yeah, we have a bunch of questions from the audience, but here's the first one I have highlighted here. It's from Jeff, and he said, sorry, I joined a few minutes late. Are there 2 owls in the room now? Are you only using one right now, or are you using both? Could you all walk through the setup that we have in the space?
Sure, I'll take that one, and then we can all, you know, share in a bit. So right now we are concentrating on one owl. So you will notice on our table, if you've seen it, there are 2, but we're using one. We're going to demonstrate 2 a little bit later in the this third part of this session, Owl Connect, which allows you to put 2 owls together. When I was talking earlier, I was holding up an owl, so this was just kind of an example so I could point to things, but this one is not actually being used in the meeting.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go for another one. Let's see, from Diana, where is the ignore zone? Is that on the current software or only on the new Meeting Owl 3?
So that's great. The ignore zone is actually on both the Meeting Owl Pro, the existing product, and also the new Meeting Owl 3. And like I mentioned earlier, the software, it always gets smarter. We're constantly introducing new features. So that was introduced on the Meeting Owl Pro, and it's being carried over and continue to evolve on the Meeting Owl 3.
And then just to clarify, if it wasn't totally obvious, the app, I was kind of controlling the changes using the iPad here on the app.
Okay, from Sarah, does the Meeting Owl need to be connected to Wi-Fi at all times?
So the Meeting Owl does not need to be connected to Wi-Fi at all times, but we do recommend it because, as Beth has been mentioning, our software engineers are working overtime. We listen to our customers' needs. We develop features to serve those needs. We push those features out into the product. That improves your experience. That improves your remote participants' experiences. So you don't have to connect it to Wi-Fi, but you're losing out if you don't on these great software enhancements that we're working on releasing to you almost quarterly.
Okay, here's a good one to demonstrate. Okay, can you all demonstrate what it's like when multiple participants are talking at the same time?
Sure, so this is the cocktail party. Let's talk about what you have for breakfast this morning. 1, 2, 3. I stopped
I
at
had
2
it.
coffee
Today I
shops.
had,
Dunkin' Donuts,
peach
let's see.
Sweetened and under 2 peach coffees.
and maybe a,
I had an iced tea, so far, so.
So we used to call that the champagne party, and the meeting owl deliberately ignores when there's this cacophonous environment. And you know, our philosophical point of view on this situation is that there's a person who's running the meeting and they're going to get it under control, and the meeting owl is not going to make the remote person dizzy
Yeah.
while we wait for that meeting to settle down. So you're not going to see massive amount of shifting and changing in the stage area while there's a multitude of voices screaming
Yeah.
at the meeting owl.
That's right, and we don't want it to be a tennis match. You know, we can toggle the speed. We did talk earlier about the fact that it'll recognize and it'll focus on the active speaker 4 times faster than the previous version, and that is an enhancement as the meeting owl has evolved. However, it's not going to bounce them back and forth so fast that it makes the remote experience dizzying, as Max said, and you know, again, our focus is on the experience and it is on the remote person experience. So we take a lot of those things into consideration.
Excellent. Let's see what else we have here. How can the owl be mounted? Can we mount it on a ceiling or a tripod?
yeah, that's a great question. There are many different ways to mount it. You could simply put it on the table. You could mount it. You could drill a hole to the bottom of your table and you could screw it in. There's a tripod mounting screw on there, but you could certainly, like I alluded to, you could put it on a tripod, or you could even mount it from your ceiling. And there's a feature in the app that allows you to flip the view, so it's very easy to mount it.
Can the owl be controlled or administered from the connected laptop, or does it always require an iPad/iPhone or mobile device?
Yeah, so we have many ways for you to control the meeting owl, and there is a desktop app that is available for Windows as well as Mac OS. But if you prefer to use a mobile device or a tablet, that is also an option for you to control the owl through as well.
Okay, we have a Europe question. Stuart wants to jump in here. Is the meeting owl available in Europe? And if so, where?
Yeah, it's available in Europe in a wide range of countries. You can either contact us directly. My email is very easy. It's stuart.collingwood@owllabs.com, or you can go direct in through the support pages and the contact pages on the website.
Perfect. I know we covered this a little bit, but we've seen this question pop up again, so it might be worth circling back. What is the recommended room size and number of participants for a meeting owl?
Yeah, so the microphone pickup range is 18 feet, which is about 5.5 meters. And the optimal range to sit from the camera is roughly 1 to 3 meters, which is about 3 to 10 feet. It works beyond that range, but this is what we say is the optimal experience. And you know, we recommend that you just try it out in your spaces, because you might find that actually works beyond those specs that I just mentioned.
And it's not really tied to a specific number of people, right? So it's more about the space that you're apart from, or I guess, sorry, how far you are from the owl. So one example, we use this room for our all hands meetings, and sometimes there's a lot of people, and you know, we've got stadium seating in the back, and it still works great, because it's more about how far you are from the owl, less that you have 30 people or whatever around it. So it can, you know, it is quite flexible for different types of environments because of that.
And then I'll just add one thing, which is with the expansion mic, which works specifically with the Meeting Owl 3, you can increase that audio pickup range if you do have people who are further away.
Sorry, things popping up on my screen. Okay, here's a simpler, I think a simpler question. This is from Paul. So is there any option to use the Meeting L3 with USB 3 or USB-C to USB 3 adapter?
So I believe if you can use an adapter to convert the USB-C output of the Meeting L back to the USB-A, which includes the USB 3. That is absolutely possible to do.
Okay. Will there ever be an option to use the camera without a computer?
We are always looking at lots of different ways to streamline your experience. So, that's certainly an opportunity for us to explore. At the moment, though, so in this room, we're connected to in-room computer, which is hosting the call. And that gives us the flexibility to run multiple platforms, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, BlueJeans, all the rest. But at the moment, the Meeting L does not host the meeting natively.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe 2 more. What will the initial setup look like? Will we need to have an IT person present?
Ooh, so when we started the company, the goal was to build something that my mom could use. And she was pretty comfortable with a USB mouse. So, the Meeting L does not require an IT person to get going with. You just take it out of the box. We took a very consumer-centric mindset to the design of the product, the experience of unboxing it, as well as making it intuitive to plug in and just use. And as far as when you plug into the computer, there's no software to install. We're using drivers that have been built into every major operating system for well over 20 years. So it'll just, you plug it in and you go. It'll just work.
Okay, let's see. Oh goodness, I had it and now I lost it. Hold on 1 second. Do you have a mobile app to control the settings that you've demonstrated today?
Yes, so as I mentioned before, we have the iOS and Android versions of our mobile app, plus the desktop one that we talked about as well. So it's very easy for someone in the room to just, make a quick change if they need to, or at the beginning of the meeting to get things set up if it's not how they like.
Great, and I'll close with this one. Is the Meeting Owl movable or transportable? Meaning having one owl, but moving it in between different conference rooms of different sizes around the building.
Absolutely. It's USB pluggable, so it makes it super easy to transport. And just recently, we actually introduced an accessory, a carrying case for the Meeting Owl, which makes the transport process even simpler.
Please welcome Owl Labs SVP of Global Marketing, Ashley Carr.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again, just over here in a different location. If you're just joining in now, my name is Ashley and I lead marketing here at Owl Labs. And I'm very excited to kick off this panel today around hybrid working. So today we're going to talk a little bit about hybrid workspaces. And I know, everyone's probably likely very aware that the hybrid and remote working is very much here to stay. But if anyone is actually, operating in that environment, as we are, we know that it can be really challenging. Still figuring out, how to set it up. What are the expectations you set amongst your staff? What technology needs do you have? The list really kind of goes on. And so I'm excited to introduce 3 panelists today who have expertise in different areas around really how they're doing hybrid work. And perhaps you'll get some good tips and tricks that you can take back to your workplace. So I will see if they're all here now. We'll have, maybe I'll have Alejandra start and introduce herself, and then we'll go to Dan and then Emma.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Alejandra Albarran. I am VP of Workspace Strategy and Design at Room. I've been, my background is actually in interior design, but I've been with Room for the last 5 years, focusing solely on workspaces. I was head of design for all of our Room product line, which is all of our modular architecture line of products. And now I'm leading our new studio. So studio is it's a branch of Room where we're trying to offer to our clients a solution with their workspaces where we can help them with a different kind of design that is more flexible with multiple layouts. And we just launched that recently.
Great. And how about Dan?
Good morning, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be with you and both of my panelists here. My name is Dan Root. I work with Wayne House Research, and we are a workplace communications and enterprise adopting organization research firm. And so we really focus on the different tools from software to hardware that you apply within your meeting spaces across the enterprise. And I have a special kind of place in my heart for hybrid work, as I have been working hybrid for a good 6-7 years at this point. So it's kind of become part of the package, so to speak, on what we research and how it is that we approach all of the different technologies coming to market.
Great, thank you. And then Emma.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emma Bredner, and I am the HR director at Process Unity. And in my HR experience, I've kind of run the gamut with all different types of work environments. So my last company was fully remote. Process Unity, my current company, is hybrid. I've also worked for CEOs who felt very strongly about being in office. I think as we all have, we've kind of run the gamut since the pandemic. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. So I'm going to get us started and talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we've all faced with hybrid work. So I know many companies are operating in hybrid. I took the train in this morning. It was very packed. And so those people are all going to some offices somewhere. Although, you do walk around office buildings and it's definitely not 100% full. So, by definition, that means we're operating in this flexible environment now. And we all kind of know that it's here to stay, but it is, challenging, right? And so I wanted to have the panelists talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that they have seen with employers really adopting hybrid work. So I will open it up to all three of you. Feel free to jump in.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ali.
Yeah. So I think for me, I think one of the challenges that we've noticed a lot when talking to clients is that embracing a hybrid workforce is it's a difficult task for sure. And the fact that it's very random today, like we don't really have like established days, or some companies are trying to bring people like some days a week, but it's kind of like there's no strategy behind it yet. I think that this is all very new for all of us. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And the second challenge that I keep finding is that even though leaders want to bring people back into the office, the offices are just not set for bringing people back because they're not offering a better experience than what they can get elsewhere. So they're not motivated to come back. So I think one of the biggest challenges I keep hearing about is like, how do we bring people back? And it all starts by making a great workspace and making people feel, welcome, invited in a super incredible environment. And I think right now is like people are kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, and they're not making changes yet. Some people are just, maybe using space differently, or they're maybe reducing their spaces. But I think the biggest question to ask right now is how do we bring people back? And I think there's a lot of tools we can use for this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We even the days that people are in the office are often my most exciting and favorite days. And then when they're quieter days, I'm like, oh, like maybe I should have just been home. So I hear you kind of like thinking about how do we set the right expectations that really make sense. Dan, did you want to jump in there on some of the challenges you're seeing?
I was actually just going to say that from what we're seeing out in the space amongst enterprises is anecdotally, I can share that some of the largest enterprises are showing somewhere between 40 and 50% of their office staff are back at any given day. And they don't see that really getting much higher just because of the fact that we do have different strategies being applied And there's also regionality that of course comes into play as well. So some of the struggles that we're seeing are more around the idea of, hey, we want to focus on equity. We want everybody to feel like they're a part of the play and a part of the team, but it comes down to the access. And that's really based in, what perspective I'm going to bring to the office as I come back. I've been used to using my personal device for the last 2 to 3 years, almost exclusively. And now I'm coming back and in a lot of cases, coming into rooms that are built for a workflow we don't use anymore, whether that's just standard content sharing within the room, but really doesn't leverage anything else. So all of us have our own mics and speakers connected, which I'm sure we've all had the moment of the piercing feedback within a meeting here since we've gone back to the office. But beyond that, there's really, how do we implement the workflows that we've all come to really rely on over the last 2 years and use them and leverage them correctly within our meeting spaces. So we've seen a lot of enterprises doing research projects over the course of this summer. And I think what we're finding is there are different schedules and different approaches depending on the culture of your company. And this is going to become something that I think is going to be reinforced in the next few years. You're going to build the spaces to really match that culture that's within your organization. And that's really going to align with the technology that you're going to try to implement as well.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Really, there is really no one size fits all solution here. And, I have friends that work in labs, right? Like they have to be in, 5 days a week. And then, but maybe on the management side, they don't have to be. And so I think, finding the right solution for your workforce makes sense. Which is a great, Emma, I don't know if you have anything to add
Yeah.
on the people side. I'm sure that's a great segue for you.
Yeah. I mean, going off of what my fellow panelists have just said, I think the biggest challenge from a people ops perspective is when you're hybrid, you're really managing 2 employee experiences, right? You're managing kind of like the office experience, but also the remote experience. And you run the risk of kind of creating these 2 different cultures, right? Unless you're super intentional. And so, what I heard both Alejandra and Dan say is kind of the strategy underpins all of this. And I think something that I would encourage every company that's going to a hybrid model to do is really be thoughtful and intentional about, okay, what does hybrid mean to us? And what are the expectations of our employees in this? And don't be afraid of laying those out very clearly, right? I think we're all trying to navigate what does hybrid work mean? And people are, figuring out what is going to work for them personally. And I think that the best thing you can do as an employer is kind of be super clear so that people can either opt in or opt out, right? Like this is what hybrid means to us. It means we're going to be in the office, X days a week, and maybe it's these days or, maybe this level or whatever it is, but be intentional about that. So then people can say, you know what, that sounds right for me. Or, actually like, I think another situation is a better fit because I think, to really create that cohesive culture in a hybrid experience, you really need people who are going to opt in and say, yes, I want to commit to this workplace experience. And then when you have those people who opt in, the burden isn't solely on people ops or solely on, support functions to make it work, right? And to create that cohesive culture. Your employees are bought in.
Yeah, very much so. Dan or Alejandra, how have you seen employees respond to some of these hybrid work challenges? Or what are you hearing either in your own workplaces as well?
Oh, I
Alejandra,
hear
I'll
that.
let you go first.
Oh, you wanna start then? It's fine.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, so of course everybody wants more flexibility, and chances are that if people weren't thrived before the pandemic about their workspaces, they're not super thrilled about going back to them now, right? So I think one of the challenges I keep hearing is like, I'm not going to come back to a worse experience that I can get elsewhere. So I think we need to make sure that experience where they come into the office, when they actually do come back into a hybrid workforce where they are going to be in a space, we need to make sure that experience is a meaningful one. How do we make that experience an experience that is going to be memorable? And like you said, Emma, I really like it, like they have to buy into this, like once an employee decides to stay at a company and agrees with this, like whatever that is, that strategy is, when they agree to stay, and then when they come in, they are expecting a lot more from our workspaces. We cannot just assume that what we had previously is going to be enough to take us forward. So we need to rethink our spaces, redesign our spaces, and that way we can make sure that we're going to return to a better way of working. So I would say there has to be a lot of focus on our physical spaces, on our workspace strategy, and also on our mindset of embracing this flexibility for both employees and also for our spaces as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, the other part of it that I see a little bit more is around the adoption of, okay, this is going to be the approach that we're going to take, and how folks really need to be met where they are. And it needs to be that flexibility of, I don't necessarily know everything you've learned up until this point, but I still need to make sure that when you come into this office or come into this meeting space, that you're able to leverage it and get done the work that you intended to without causing new friction or new hurdles to get there. And so part of that is really providing that flexibility of, I'm going to walk into a room and, well, I don't know what training you've had previously, you still need to find a path that makes sense to you and is relevant to you to get to your end state. And so you're seeing a lot, around sharing different types of content within spaces, and whether that's, you're an Apple user, so you're used to AirPlay, or you're a Windows user and you're used to Miracast, or you're used to using a service, you should be able to connect regardless of which path you're used to. And so we're seeing a lot of that come into play here in how you roll out your adoption and seeing something successful. It's not necessarily about hitting a reset and trying to train your troops on a whole new workflow, as much as it is opening up to the various paths and various ways that folks use that technology to give them the easiest path to function or to the goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, at the end of the day, everyone wants to get their work done and do it in the most productive way. And so to the extent that we can remove friction from that process, I think it's, it's a win-win overall. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about some of the challenges, and we started to get into some of the things that people are doing to make it better. But wanted to double down there on some of these solutions and the trends that everyone is seeing in their different, specialties of work. And so I thought I'd start with Emma on the people ops side of things. What are some of the policies or practices that you've seen, or even that you guys are adopting at your own companies that are really improving, how people work in this more flexible and hybrid environment?
Yeah. I think the best thing you can do is just be really clear, and define your strategy, right? Like, get with your executive team and be like, okay, where do we want people to work and why and how often, right? And like really hammer that out, because I feel like it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? Because it's like, oh, we want flexibility, right? But at the same time, it's hard for people to do that, like opt in or opt out, unless they really know like where your company stands. And I feel like that's kind of that's kind of the only wrong thing you can do, is just sort of be like, well, we're just kind of like figuring it out. I mean, at this point, we're obviously going through this huge period of transformation, but the dust has settled a little bit, right? Like, we all know that this is the new normal, and we can kind of go forward and say, okay, what is our strategy going forward from here? I had a CEO one time say that culture is like product design, and just like you design your product and you have features and a target audience and people it's not right for, right? Like, that's the same thing with your culture. And I feel like that translates into workplace experience now. Like, what is our workplace experience going to be? And let's be very intentional about defining that, and be okay with it's not going to be right for some people, and that's fine, right? So I think that's the primary thing. And I mean, on the really tactical side, I do think too, a lot of times the people ops and other support functions really shoulder the burden of like, making sure that this is going to work for every single person. And part of that is being strategic and defining what you are and what you're not. And also part of that, I think, is don't be afraid of passing along some of this responsibility to your employees, right? Like, if people are opting in to work hybrid, they have a vested interest in making this work. And like, I want this extra flexibility, so I want to make this work. I want to create this culture. I would say find those cultural champions in your company. And then, if they're interested in, whatever they want to do, like events or however they want to do some cultural events. One thing I did at my last company was say, hey, everything has to be hybrid. Everything has to work for in-person and remote, whether that's like a remote component or has to be remote friendly or whatever. But let's all think about it this way. And I actually tied budget to it. I was like, hey, I'm only going to fund the things that I feel like are going to be hybrid for everybody. And it's you don't have to do this alone, right? Your employees have a vested interest in keeping this going, and people will get really creative, right? If you set that expectation with them. So again, I think it's just about, expectation setting. And again, like, involve your employees in this, right? Like, if they if they're choosing to be here, they want to make it work too.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I love that kind of, you know, relation to product strategy and being really clear about what you are and what you aren't. Because I think, in today's environment, we have people, companies that are fully remote, and we have fully in office, and then we have hybrid. And so there are these different opportunities for people to find the right place for what works for them. And so I think, that's a great insight there. Um, Dan or Ali, did you want to add anything? Don't feel like you have to, but you're welcome to if you want. No? Cool. And then Emma, is there anything that you've seen, like just on the watch outs or things like that, or anything that you'd suggest that hasn't been successful, or that you've just seen in the marketplace that people are moving away from?
I mean, I think that it does seem like the small, it seems like a minority of people want to be like in an office, 24/7 when they don't have to be, right? So definitely we need to be conscious of being of adding flexibility to people's lives. But yeah, I mean, just going back to product design, don't try to be all things to all people. One thing I've seen anecdotally a few times is like I've heard about candidates who, the recruiter is telling them, oh yeah, like, oh, we're flexible, whatever is going to work for you. And then they show up and they're like, oh, actually, you have to be in the office 3 days a week, and they're like, what? They feel like I was sold a false bill of goods, right? Or the other side where it's like, oh yeah, we have this thriving in office culture and that an office is really important to this person. They show up and they're like, nobody's here. So it's just kind of like, I feel like, yeah, just be really clear and don't be afraid of just setting those expectations, because then people can make the right choices for them. And the reality is, like, we're all figuring this out. You are going to lose people, but the best thing you can do, I think, is just be really honest about what it's like to work here and is that a fit for you or not.
Yeah, that is so true. That bait and switch has definitely got to be on any job seeker's mind, I imagine.
I would actually add one thing to that, which is that we've seen a little bit of some companies creating a set or standard and then kind of moving that goalpost over time just based off of what else is going on. And that tends to, and Emma, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I've seen out there in the world, that tends to get the worst reaction from your team. If you are saying this is steadfast, this is what we're going to do, hire new people, bring people on under that expectation, and then you change the goalpost, you really got to be careful about how your staff comes along with you on that journey, because you can really poison the well on that trust, where you're building a relationship with these people who are going to give you 40, 50, hours a week. And you really want to make sure that, hey, this is the right move. I'm going to invest in you and learn how to do everything your way. So there just needs to be a roadmap and a pretty clearly defined runway on, hey, we're doing fully hybrid, pick what you want up until this date. From there, this is kind of our transition pattern, and just be very, to Emma's point, very, direct in how that's going to work.
Yeah, completely. And I think too, think about who are you solving for? I know, and people have, it's so tempting to be like, okay, I have these 3 people who are, this isn't working for them, so let's like try to make it work for them, right? And I feel like, let's look at the forest for the trees here, like who are the people who have opted into this? And also, what is going to work for our business, right? Like, where do we need people to be for our business operations? And if there's a small margin who it's not working for, like, let's not try to solve for them at the expense of solving for the people that we need here and that this is working for.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Alejandra, I'd love to get a little bit of your point of view here around, how companies are adapting their physical spaces to these hybrid needs. We've got kind of the employer view there. But what would you recommend in terms of, how companies should approach planning for their physical spaces for hybrid work?
That's a really good question. I think, some companies, like I said before, they're reducing their footprint. Other companies are rethinking their spaces and they're kind of making it more social, more collaborative, more communal spaces. But I think that many people are just staying a little bit like in a limbo because nobody really knows how to do it. It's hard to try to change things when you don't know what's going to be working, right? Like, it's really scary. It can be challenging. It can also feel very overwhelming. So I think it's a little bit of what Emma was saying as well. Is like, planning a strategy that works for your company today, and then adapting your space to that. And I think the more flexible you can make your space, the more fluid that space can be, the better, because you can, and nothing will be set in stone. You know, predicting the future, it's really a futile quest today. So I think the more we can, you know, offer variety and choice in one space, the more we can have different types of environments that offer, you know, a lot of, for example, I think there's going to be like a little bit of a shift in how we use space. I think open spaces are going to be used a lot more for collaboration, for meetings. You know, previously meetings used to happen within closed doors in closed spaces, and right now it's more common, more and more common that you see this happening outside, you know, in more like open environments, brainstorming sessions, using modular components in the space, being able to transform that space to your needs in the moment. I think that's super important. And I think the use of private spaces is going to be more for virtual interactions, like when you have to have a phone call or a you know, a meeting with some people that are remote, etc. So I think the use of space is going to change, and we just need to make sure that we are providing in one layout all of these different type of environments that are going to make that experience a very fulfilling one. And when I come into the office, I know that I have all of these different options to make my work and to do my work the best way I can do my work, and not have to resource to go to a third workplace or to another place. You know, I have it all in my office.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Even, you know, you can't see it because I have my background up, but we have a room pod and I'm sitting in it right now taking a phone call because I know I want to make sure it's quiet. I don't have any distractions here in the background, so I don't bother all of you guys with our background noise. But I think that's so key, right? Like, you know, in the previous world, you would come into the office and everyone was there, right? But now if you have some people remote, you know, that you have to have all the different types of ways for people to connect with their remote you know, the remote participants on their team that they're working with, or outside vendors and things like that. So, you know, maintaining the different types of environments and, you know, flexible spaces, I think is really key there. Dan, how do you think about the technology that kind of fits into those spaces? You know, like how have things changed over the last few years? What trends are you seeing there?
Absolutely. I would say, you know, to what Alejandra really just was getting at, which is around, you know, that flexibility of coming into the office and finding the space that works best for you. But that still means like all of your connectivity to Zoom or to any other service that you need, or to the cloud for your documents. All of that has to be as seamless at, you know, an individual workstation or in one of the phone booths or in a meeting space. And so we have seen a lot of the tech that's coming out start to align with this. So for instance, within Zoom, there's now the kiosk mode when you log, you know, when you walk into the office, so you can see where different people are and at which workspaces they have to be sitting at that day. You can either reserve a space or go to a workstation that you like and then log in there, and it immediately registers to the rest of your team. Hey, this is where, you know, Ashley is sitting today. So if we're coming in to get work done with Ashley, okay, I'm probably going to come find you or sit near you. So we're seeing some of the different things really enable that seamless workflow. And then when it's time for us to sit down with Alejandra or Emma, we need to go to a room that's a little bit more private. We have, you know, a really easy way of bringing my personal device, connecting it to something like an Owl Labs device, where we're going to all be able to be seen, heard, and add that professional level or grade experience to whatever meeting we happen to be doing. So there's a lot of kind of tweaking the technology that we use to just try to get out of the way a little more and expect, hey, Ashley's booked that meeting room. So we already know when Ashley walks in from her personal device, we should probably see that from a proximity. She should be able to start the meeting because she's the head of the call, and immediately leverage things that are within the room, like the camera, the speakers, and so on.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't even believe it. We're flying through the time. We have only a few minutes left. So what I thought we would do to close out is just have each of you kind of share, you know, one piece of advice or parting thought for those of our listeners that are embarking on a hybrid journey or some sort of flexible work arrangement. What's something that you would have them consider or recommend? Let's see. We'll start with Emma, I guess, just so we're not awkwardly staring at each other.
Sure, I'll start. I would say your managers become so critical in a hybrid workforce or remote, right? I think there's so much talk about employees, and still to this day, there's this like feeling of, well, how do we know people are working if we can't see them, right? And the reality is, especially in the knowledge economy, like hours worked does not translate into results, and it hasn't for a long time, right? So I think your managers then become like, focus less on your employees and how do we know that they're doing and they're working, right? And focus more on your managers and what goals are they setting? Like, are these goals tying to impact? How are we giving feedback? How are we measuring results, right? I've actually had, I've had a few managers where I'd say, hey, where are these employees' goals and how are we measuring against them? They were like, well, how do I know if they're doing a good job or what are they supposed to be doing? And I'm like, oh my God, what? And that shows to me that, okay, this manager doesn't have enough, business context or strategy. We really need to be invested in training our managers and making sure that they are setting clear expectations with their employees. So I would say investing in your managers is so crucial. And all the time that you spend, thinking about your employees, don't forget about your managers, equally as important.
Yes, that is so true. How about you, Dan? What do you think?
I would say, as you're embarking on this journey, really think about what is it that is going to bring folks back to the office. It's to do a function, because I can do most of my work by myself, but there's reasons I want to get together with people. What do those look like for your company and the culture that you have? And from there, really establish, the core pillars of your culture from the office standpoint, and that flexibility that Alejandra was really focusing on. And one area to be careful of, don't make the assumption that as everyone comes back to the office, they're going to have the same perspective or the same level of knowledge about each technology piece you're introducing, because what used to take maybe a morning or two for folks to roll out new meeting room conferencing technology is a little bit tougher now, because instead of having somebody in the room for maybe a morning and everybody's in the office, so they're all going to stop by and get their tutorial, you now have folks coming in and out over really maybe a week, over 2 weeks. And so to try to keep a resource there to teach everybody new things is really challenging. So just focus on, how do I make this as flexible as possible and meeting my people where they are and on their perspective on the technology they're used to.
That's wonderful. And then last but not least, Alejandra, do you want to wrap the last one?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say there's two things. The first one would be to shift from fixed to fluid. And I mean, in terms of mindset, in terms of strategies, in terms of how we also use our spaces. And the second one would be to remain in a state of beta, because in a permanent state of beta, because we cannot assume that we know what's going to happen next. So just remaining open to change and understanding that things will change, that our employees will need different things at different times, and just to continuously study what's happening with our people, if they're happy, what's happening with our spaces, if they're working, and just be open to changing that often, as much as possible, as much as it's needed. I think that's the two things I would say we should focus on.
I love it. And another, product development type of mentality, right? Like have a great strategy and then continue to iterate, right? And that's, going to be one of the best ways forward to finding a hybrid solution that works for your employees. So thank you all for your time and joining us. I'm going to turn it back to Kate for the next session.
Yes, thank you so much to all our panelists for joining today. Our next session will begin in just a couple moments, so hang in there and we'll see you real soon.
Thanks, Kate. Appreciate it. So it was interesting conversations there. Appreciate you joining. So now I think the exciting part, we're going to do some live demonstrations of our room solutions here at Owl Labs. We did some high-level introductions in our first section, but we'd like to do a deep dive into each of our solutions. So just to preface things, you're actually viewing our conference room here from a standard front of the room camera solution. This is not an Owl Labs camera. We're actually showcasing this just to differentiate a typical front of the meeting room camera. And we'll show you our Meeting Owl 3 here. So also for some perspective on the room you're looking at, this is a 16 by 18 foot conference room. It has a 14-foot conference room table. We have a television display at the front. You can obviously see our whiteboard there at the back. And we also have a Meeting Owl 3 at the center of our table here. So, as you can see here, we actually probably can't even tell. We have 5 participants in our meeting here. So you're actually missing somebody Babs here, who's sitting at the front of the room. And, the challenge here is if I turn to talk to Ashley or to Beth, you end up looking at the back of my head here. which is not a great experience. So with that, we'll now transition from our front of the room camera to our Meeting Owl 3, which is sitting at the center of our table. I want to reiterate that this is the exact same meeting room, but this is how different your meeting can actually look from a Meeting Owl 3. You've got a 360 view of the exact same space, but much more importantly, the camera is now spotlighting the active speakers in our meeting room. So to really showcase the power of our attention system here and what the Meeting Owl 3 can do, we're just going to do some quick introductions so you know everybody who's in the room here. I'll start with myself, Dave Whitmer, Channel Account Manager. I specialize in working with our top reselling partners in the channel. And so with that, I will hand it off to Kaylin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylin McNamara. I am a sales director here at Owl Labs. Work very closely with everyone in the room, but especially Dave. And I've been here for 2.5 years at this point. Yeah. Beth?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Beth Tuck, and I'm Group Product Manager here at Owl Labs. I've been here just about 2 years and, work from kind of all over the place, whether it's in Boston or Somerville or whether it's at my house. Babs, why don't you?
Sure, yeah, my name is Babisa. Most people know me as Babs. You couldn't even see me before, but I'm glad I'm finally on the stage. I'm a part of the quality assurance team at Owl Labs. I am based in Boston and my remote office is in Somerville, but I do love to come in whenever I can.
Hey everyone, and I'm last but not least here, Ashley. You've met me earlier if you've been on, but I lead marketing and I'm based in the Boston area. So like to come into the office when I can.
Awesome, thanks, Ashley. So now you know everybody here in the room. And you've kind of seen how our attention system works. Let's dive into the Meeting Owl 3 itself. I'm going to hand it off to Beth, who will walk you through some of the features and tech specs here. Have at it, Beth.
Thanks, Dave. I went through some of these earlier today, but I thought I would reiterate. So today we're excited to introduce the Meeting Owl 3. It's our newest product in our lineup, and it comes with our enhanced Owl intelligence system and also a way to enhance your audio experience with the expansion mic that we're also introducing. It's an all-in-one 360 camera, speaker, microphone solution. So it very simply just sits in the middle of your table. You plug it in using a USB-C connection to your computer, power to the wall. We'll talk more about how you set it up in a little bit. Very easy to set up, and you're good to go. In regards to kind of the specifics of the product, on the top, we have a 1080p 360-degree fisheye lens that's patented that allows you to see the entire room. So if you look at the top of the screen, you'll see that the panoramic strip, which shows you everyone in here. There's 5 of us, obviously. And we devote the rest of the stage to the active speakers. That's what folks who are in the room really want to focus on. In addition to the camera, we have our audio system. So the combination of speakers and microphones. There are 8 omnidirectional microphones that are carefully placed around the top of the system that allow you to pick up all the audio in the room, so that the remote participants can very clearly hear what the conversation. And then there are 3 full range speakers in kind of the middle bottom of the product that allows the folks in the room to be able to hear whatever our remote participants are saying. And let's see. We also have our owl. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm gonna kick it over to, I think, Kaylin for 1 second to just introduce the intelligence system, and then I will come right back and talk about the expansion. Right?
Of course. So we talked a little bit about this morning, but all of that technology, all that hardware kind of comes together to create what we call the brain of the device, the Owl intelligence system, right? What you're seeing in terms of, and Dave will talk more about this in a little bit, but what you're seeing in terms of the stage splitting and frame switching, if you will, between active participants in the room is happening automatically. We'll talk in a little bit about how to make things happen manually, and you saw some of the features this morning, but that is one of the main value propositions here, is that you can plug this device into your computer, launch your meeting, right? And then the brain, the Owl intelligence system, automatically sees right, looks and hears around the room to highlight the active participants. That's not the end of our personification of this device for the rest of the demo, I'll tell you that much, but bear with us. Many of you are probably familiar with the Meeting Owl Pro, which was the generation before this Meeting Owl 3. So we want to talk a little bit about like the comparison of that product to this product, the Meeting Owl 3 that we're using right now, and some of those key improvements that we've made. So we're going to kind of purposely like hop around a little bit on some of the stats here so that again you can see it actively moving around participants in the room. First and foremost, we made some major improvements to the accuracy of the device, right? So there's 58% improvement in detecting faces further away from the owl, or in other words, it's more precise, right? Dave?
Sure. I think one of the most exciting improvements on the Meeting Owl 3 that I see every day when I use it and demo it for customers and partners is definitely the speed. And I think that's something you're seeing happening in real time right here, is how quickly it actually responds to speakers in the room. And it actually does that, and it improves the way it does that in a meeting. It's actually mapping out where people are sitting, and it gets smarter, and it allows it to switch between active speakers. Our new software that's allowing this to happen, we're actually doing this 4 times faster than our old firmware here. So that's the feature I'm most excited about. I'll hand it off to Ashley.
Yes, and you got to hear my favorite feature earlier, and I'm sticking with it, which is the improvements to the stage design. So the new stage design now has around 98% of the area dedicated to faces in the room versus 92% before. And it has these nice upgraded, clean, crisp black lines outlining the different squares that we have compared to previously, which were white, and some new upgraded icons as well to help you understand which features are on and off and how the owl is being performing. So Beth, I will turn it to you. You have your voice back. We'll see.
Let's give it a try. Okay, I think we're good. The dry air must be coming in with the summer leaving and the winter coming soon. With that, I wanted to also introduce to you the expansion mic. So we are really excited about this accessory that works specifically with the Meeting Owl 3. And the expansion mic allows us to increase the audio range by 8 feet. So you simply, let's say you have a longer table, you put your expansion mic at the end, close to somebody who's further away or who's a quieter speaker, and you can easily pick up their audio. There's a custom micro HDMI connection that goes from the expansion mic to the Meeting Owl 3. And another nice feature is just the kind of the handy mute button that's on it. So if you're far away and you want to just mute the audio for a moment, you can simply do that just as easily as if you're closer to the owl, you can mute, unmute, change the volume physically on the product as well. And then I think the last thing I'll say is the system continues to get smarter over time, and we're constantly updating features, providing new and exciting benefits to users. So whether you want to do that manually and kick off a software update by yourself, whether you want to leave it connected to Wi-Fi and you'll get any updates automatically overnight, it's your choice, but we just encourage you to continue to update your product so that you get the latest and greatest. And I think with that, I'll turn it back to Kaylin.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about setup and compatibility and some of the features that we went over this morning. We're not going to do them all again, but just to kind of reiterate, I think one of the best parts about this is what I refer to as the low barrier to entry, right? You don't have to be a seasoned IT professional to get one of these out of the box and start using one on a meeting and provide yourself and your remote employees or colleagues or students, frankly, a much better and more equitable experience. And that's partially because, some of our bragging rights here are it's plug and play. I think everyone says that and not everyone means it. It's very quick to get set up. And frankly, we don't talk a ton about it, but it's very portable when you're just plugging it into a host computer in the room. So it can adapt to different spaces. It can move within a certain space to make sure that everyone at home has an optimal experience, can see and hear and everyone in the space, right? So let's talk about unboxing. We actually had a third-party company come in and kind of do an analysis of the device. Wayne House did that for us, and what they found was from literally unboxing to actively being used in meetings, such that we're using it now, can take as little as 6 minutes. Okay, and that process looks like getting it out of the box, Plugging it into power, it does have to be plugged into power at all times. Plugging it through that USB cord that Beth mentioned into the host computer, and then downloading the app, the Meeting Owl app, onto your iOS or Android device, phone or tablet, and going through registration, which takes maybe 2 minutes, right? We also encourage you at that point to connect it to Wi-Fi. That's not a requirement. The reason we want you to connect it to Wi-Fi is so that we can send over-the-air updates in the middle of the night between 2 and 5 a.m. local time, to make sure you have the most updated, software, firmware, all that good stuff. Okay, but again, you don't have to use it. Don't have to have it connected to Wi-Fi at all times. I saw a question on the chat earlier about, okay, if we don't connect it to Wi-Fi, how do we keep it updated? Which is a really great question. We have a different feature called mobile refresh, and we have a ton of knowledge base articles in our the support section of our website that walk you through all these things. But one of them is called mobile refresh, where you can essentially download the software update to a nearby tablet or phone, an iOS, Android mobile device, right? And then push it to the device. So that's one way to work around Wi-Fi. But again, most of our customers keep it on Wi-Fi, keep it plugged in overnight. And that is exactly, as Beth spoke to earlier, how it gets smarter. So that's kind of set up, very easy. And like I said, very easy to move around if you need to. We'll talk about exactly the opposite, kind of keeping it in one place and the advantages there later on when we talk about the meeting HQ. But I mentioned the app a little bit. We talked about it a little bit earlier this morning. There's several things you can do there on the iOS or Android device app. We also have a desktop app that's accessible on your computer to the host computer that's running the meeting. And there you can activate things like turning off the panorama, the 360 panorama. You can activate presenter enhance, which we'll talk about in a second, shift the panorama center, vertically flip the owl. So many of our customers who use these in learning spaces or classrooms or something like that will actually invert the owl, install it in the ceiling with what's the word I'm looking for? Just some sort of
Ceiling
Pretty
drop
much
mount.
like it,
mount.
yeah.
Thank you. And you can use the app to invert it so that it's not upside down. And therefore you get all these cords and, make sure that there's no student running into it and knocking it over. So that's all available in the app, and much of it is available on the desktop app as well. You can also use that app to create persistent settings. So some of these things you can say, hey, Owl device A, or however you want to name it, right? We have some very interesting names, especially in the Owl Labs environment here for our devices. But you can essentially say, never have the 360 pano on in this meeting space. We don't need it, right? So from meeting to meeting, even if you unplug the device and turn it off, once you plug it back in and start the meeting again, it's still going to work that way. There are also some other things which we've already talked about that you can do by meeting, like camera lock, pan, tilt, zoom, presenter enhance, again, toggling that 360 pano off and the ignore zone. I mentioned compatibility before. The short and long of it is it's basically compatible with everything, right? So this is an external webcam that's going to plug into the host computer. So we work with all the major video conferencing platforms: Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, Skype for Business, Skype, WebEx, GoToMeeting, RingCentral. I think basically everything. If there's a platform that you like to use, it's maybe a little more niche and we haven't tried it, right? And again, we have a full list of everyone we've kind of confirmed that we're compatible with on our support site. If we haven't tried it, we're more than willing to. So just reach out to us at support and we'll make sure we're compatible with them. So that's what we mean when we say we're platform agnostic. And I think that's a huge advantage, since anyone and everyone needs some sort of technology like this, but there's a plethora of video conferencing platforms now that are in use. So we want to make sure that we work with whatever you need us to work with. So that's registration, that's unboxing, that's getting it set up and working on your first meeting, and platform agnosticism, interoperability. Yeah, so I'll kind of kick it back to Dave to talk about the full picture here of the three as we move into our other devices that really truly create a full room solution here.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaylin. Appreciate it. So we've kind of reviewed the tech specs of the product. Kaylin's talked about, the setup process, a lot of the features that you've seen here as well. But I kind of want to bring it up a higher level here and just talk about, why this product. Obviously, visually, this is something that differs quite a bit from the front of the room solutions that kind of saturate this product category. But our whole goal here of all this, technical jargon and features, which are, very interesting and powerful, but our whole goal here is to make the experiences equitable for people who are not in the room. That's really what this is all about. Again, we talked about at the beginning, not feeling like a fly on the wall from these front of the room cameras. We want people who are not there to have almost a one-on-one, meeting exchange with everyone in the room, no matter who's talking or where they're sitting. That's really the goal. Additionally, for the people in the room, we want them changing their behavior as little as possible around the technology in the room. I think what we see a lot with a lot of the front of the room solutions is we all have to huddle on one end of the room and face one direction, which makes a very awkward in-person meeting for those who are actually in the room. So with our various solutions here, we're trying to make the meetings as organic as possible, both for the people in the room as well as those who are remote as well. Finally, a real big improvement with our Meeting Owl 3 and our expanded product portfolio here is really the versatility of the unit. Our Meeting Owl Pro has been very, very successful, used in many, many different use cases and meeting environments. But with this new Meeting Owl 3, we now have the ability to add, Beth talked about the expansion mic for larger meeting spaces. And you can actually pair multiple Owl devices together, which we're going to demonstrate in just a minute. But the whole concept here is that this isn't just, a huddle room solution or a small meeting room solution. Depending on the size or even the shape of your environment, we can adapt really to whatever you're doing there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So one feature I love getting to demonstrate, which I'm going to jump into now, it's called Presenter Enhance. This can be toggled on within the app, but there's actually a physical button on the device itself. And to just kick it off, I want to explain the default behavior of the Owl is to track a meeting in a physical space between stationary speakers. If I get up and walk away here, it'll find me eventually, but it's not going to live track me. But if there's a presentation situation or an education situation, this can be hugely powerful. So we've toggled on Presenter Enhance mode now. It's now identified me as a presenter in this space. It's using both the sound of my voice, but also recognize me as a human shape. We don't do any facial recognition or recording or anything like that. But this is huge. This gives somebody the ability to wander around the room, use visual aids and things like that, as well as, we talked about our whiteboard content back there. So I'm going to move back to the back of our conference room. You'll see as I move back here, it live tracks me. I can use visual aids back here, with our whiteboard solution. And this is great. You can kind of see what's going on back here on my whiteboard, but it gets a little far away. It may be hard to read. You'll notice some glare, on this whiteboard. So we have a new product. It's called our Whiteboard Owl, which you see right here. I'm holding this up, just a simple square box. This is quite different than our Meeting Owl device. This is mounted on the opposing wall facing our whiteboard. And so now me as the presenter, I have the ability to toggle between these two. And that's one challenge I think we've seen with other products on the market is how do you do that in a seamless and organic way? Are you pointing your nose in an app or having to go back to your computer? We have a little bit different take on that. So we have two magnetic tags, which can stick to a whiteboard. Alternatively, they can be hung with a little suction cup if your whiteboard's not magnetic. But these both crop the area you want to target, but more importantly, as the presenter, give me the ability to toggle between our Meeting Owl view and a dedicated whiteboard view. This is a really cool feature. It's cropped the area I want you to see on my whiteboard. Additionally, we have an enhanced feature. You'll notice the whiteboard itself is much more saturated. We've eliminated the glare on the whiteboard. It's also highlighting the content, written right on the board. The other really cool thing is it highlights this in real time. So if I want to actually chart out meeting productivity, when you start using a Meeting Owl Pro, as I draw that, you can see that saturate in real time. And as that saturates, it also records it and puts it in front of me as the presenter. So you'll notice I'm transparent here. I'm not blocking the content that is on my whiteboard, making it much easier to see. So, really nice flexibility, not having to interact with the technology to switch. And then when I want to switch back to my Meeting Owl view, I just simply give this a flip. And this comes right back to me now. So I skipped over kind of how this is working and sort of connecting with our Meeting Owl device. We actually have what we call Owl Connect. So Owl Connect is actually the pairing standard between multiple Owl devices. So what I just demonstrated for you, we actually have a Meeting Owl 3 paired with our whiteboard owl on the opposing wall. It's a wireless connection. It's using a local encrypted Wi-Fi connection between the two. It does not need to pair to the local area network to connect, the whiteboard owl and Meeting Owl 3. Additionally, an alternative use case for this is to actually pair two identical Meeting Owl 3s together, which we've done just now. So you saw the transition of our primary owl. This whole meeting has been happening on one single owl. We've now paired a second owl that is much closer to me at the end of the table. I talked about the versatility before I came down to this end of the room. With two Meeting Owl devices now, we can cover much larger spaces, much longer meeting room tables, which are never round or square, that provides a more optimal coverage area. So with two now, whichever owl is closest to the active speaker, in this case, the new owl, it's now capturing both my audio and video, and they work in conjunction to target, who's ever actively speaking, no matter where they're sitting at the table. Again, additional coverage, but also now with the second camera and mic, we're avoiding that side face and back of head experience that you get with the limitation of a camera mounted at the front of the room. So with that, we're actually going to turn off our secondary camera and talk about, we mentioned our Meeting HQ solution. This is our dedicated smart conferencing solution, and I'm going to hand this off to Kaylin to talk about our Meeting HQ.
Great. So yeah, this guy's going to go in a second, right? This is kind of, again, part of the Owl intelligence system to not whip around too quickly when someone moves or stops talking. But I also want to note, I'm not sure if Dave noted this, but like putting on Owl Connect live in the middle of a meeting probably won't happen. So that went really smoothly. It only took a couple of seconds there. That speaks to the power of this type of connection between our room solutions, between our devices here. But most of the time, right, that'll probably be set up when you walk into the meeting and ready to go, so that you're not having to have someone in the space like Babs was, turn it on in the middle of the meeting. I kind of mentioned walking into a space and running with it, going. That is the point of the Meeting HQ. So one of our behind the scenes colleagues here is going to share a slide with you. That's because it's very hard to show what the Meeting HQ is when you're using it or when it's in the space. The Meeting HQ, simply put, is how you fully integrate a Meeting Owl device, or devices, I should say, into your space, right? It is the replacement of the laptop or desktop that is in the space that the Meeting Owl needs to plug into. So there's an adapter that comes in the box. You plug that into the bottom of the Meeting Owl. You simply perch it right on top of the Meeting HQ. You plug the Meeting HQ, you like that? You plug the Meeting HQ into power. You plug it into the in-room screen via HDMI, and you can also connect it via Ethernet. That was a question about the Meeting Owl before. You cannot connect a Meeting Owl directly to via Ethernet. It's got to be a Wi-Fi connection, but with the Meeting HQ, you can. And again, that's how we're going to ensure that the software and the firmware on the HQ are up to date. Now, what does it do? Why use this instead of a computer in the space? It takes away the friction of someone having to come into the space and quote unquote run the meeting. Make sure they have the laptop, make sure they are, the person who owns the Zoom link or the Google Meet link or the Teams link, make sure they activate it. The HQ will be fully integrated into your calendaring and room booking systems if you use Google Workspace or Office 365. Okay, and then your IT leader or admin is also going to set up your video conferencing platforms of choice. Right now, the HQ supports use of Google Meet, MS Teams, and Zoom. Okay, more to come, like WebEx, for example. What that means is once it's fully integrated, it means that someone can walk in the space, see, as you're seeing in the screenshot now, this is kind of a screenshot of what the tablet looks like, see the meetings that are pre-scheduled for that space, and you as a coworker, colleague, what team leader, it doesn't really matter, are going to schedule those on GCal, on Outlook calendar, whatever kind of company you use there to schedule your meetings, add the room that the HQ and the OWL are in as the room resource tied to it. So that way, when I walk in, I can see that, oh, I'm about to start my QM weekly sync, click on the button, and all of a sudden the OWL is going to turn on. That's going to feed obviously to the in-room device so that remote participants, remote participants can now join the meeting. I can see them on the TV in the room as an in-room participant. And move on, right? And get the meeting started, right? Don't have to plug anything in, don't have to make sure I'm there a couple minutes early. Again, it's to provide a frictionless experience to start and end meetings on time. I think the key differentiator here for us is that it's interoperable. And so our proprietary quick start software that lives on the meeting HQ can actually automatically recognize what type of link is put into the meeting. Is it a Zoom link? Is it a Meet link? Is it an MS Teams link? And launch that video conferencing platform automatically. And, you know, as far as we know, there's not too many out there that really truly support interoperability. This is really great for any type of organization, environment, really anything. It doesn't even have to be kind of like a standard corporation. We have tons of people who use this in town council meetings and classrooms and all that good stuff. It gives you the flexibility to use multiple conferencing devices. So we use Zoom 9 times out of 10 here at OWL, but we often have demos, Dave, right, with people who use MS Teams and they want to see what the OWL looks like on MS Teams. So we can walk into this exact conference room, click on start meeting and start a Zoom demo for a customer who's interested. And then the next demo that starts, you know, on the half hour, on the hour, right? All we have to do is click the next meeting and it'll start a Teams meeting. Anything I missed on, you know, the good meat of the HQ and the value of it?
No, I think that's a great coverage of that. And really that kind of ties this whole thing up. We've transitioned, you know, from a single meeting OWL sitting in the center of the room to really an ecosystem of products and solutions that can cover and adapt to really any type of meeting room you're having, from, you know, huddle spaces to conference rooms, to classrooms. Really, you know, I think the versatility of what we're doing here, I think is really unmatched, you know, in this category. Again, because we're not bolted to the wall. This can really be used anywhere you want. So the other thing I just wanted to mention, if you do have questions on anything you've seen here in this demo, if you haven't already, please ask those in the chat. We'd really love to answer and address any questions you have. And then moving forward, you know, we've got a large audience here, but if you're interested in talking to someone from sales, please visit our website. We do have a sales contact form right at the bottom of our homepage. Additionally, if you are a reseller and are interested in learning more about our reseller program, or talking to someone, including myself, about selling OWL Labs solution, there's a become a reseller link right at the bottom of our website. So please check those out. We really look forward to talking to you, engaging, and you know, working with you to find a good solution that works for you. So appreciate your time. Again, ask those questions. We've got Max and Mark, our co-founders, coming up, who are going to answer some more questions as well. So thank you very much.
To kick off our next and final session, please welcome OWL Labs Senior Director of Brand and Communications, Kristen Solano.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today and sticking around for the final session. And thank you, Kate, for the introduction. So my name is Kristen Solano, and I lead global brand and communications efforts here at OWL Labs. And I'm thrilled today to have the opportunity to interview our two fearless co-founders, just so you can learn a little bit more about OWL Labs, how it came to be, the inner workings, a little bit more about our culture, and, you know, grill them on a few questions that you all might have as well. So without further ado, let's make sure I can see everybody here. All right, we've got Max McKeeve and Mark Schnittman based in our Boston HQ office. Personally, I am based in Connecticut by way of New York City. I've always been a remote worker at OWL Labs, and OWL has actually been a hybrid company, as you could probably imagine, well before the pandemic. So I'll kick it over to Max first to introduce himself. And Max, when you introduce yourself, tell us what you do kind of at OWL Labs. What does your day-to-day look like? Where are you based? Where do you work from mainly? And what is one thing you like to do outside of being at OWL and working?
Sure. So, hey, everybody, my name is Max McKeeve. Some of you I've met in the previous session. I am one of the co-founders, and on any given day, I'm doing anything from engineering to operations to product, sometimes helping with sales or PR if Kristen needs a hand in any aspect of the business. I split time between New Hampshire and the Boston area. I come into the office a couple of times a week usually. And one of my recent hobbies, I guess, is smoking, not cigarettes, but meat. So, and I've been trying to learn how to smoke various meats and veggie burgers even. So it's been quite the hobby, and it takes a lot of patience, and it's not an exact science, so it's really tough to get it right.
I love it. All right, on to you, Mark.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark Schnittman. I am the other co-founder and CTO at Owl Labs. My actual day-to-day, I focus a lot on product, leading the product management team. Although to be very fair and honest to Max, he plays a huge role in leading the product team as well as one of his many side jobs. I am based in the Boston area. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I actually spread my working out between 3 locations. We have a engineering lab office in Union Square in Somerville that I frequent, as well as the headquarters in Boston. And I also work from home. And I'd say in any given week, I kind of spread myself out between those 3 places, and occasionally at the cafe as well. I really like to hit all the different environments. And in terms of my one hobby, I only get to pick one. I thought I was going to outdo you, Max, with odd hobbies. I don't know, maybe this is more odd. I'm going to pick pinball. So I'm a big pinball aficionado. I have a small collection, with the oldest machine being a 1980 Flash Gordon and the newest one being a 2021 Godzilla. So I really enjoy pinball. It's very sort of true to my personality, or my work personality, of loving all things software and mechanical. And to me, there's just nothing better than fighting against gravity. I'll take it over a purely digital game any day of the week.
Okay, that's so interesting. So where do you store this collection, Mark?
Oh boy, it's spread out. There's actually one in our office in Somerville. There's a couple in the garage at my house. There's another couple that are on the 2nd floor of the house, or apartment rather, which is a story in itself, because to get one up an old Somerville staircase requires taking the whole machine apart and moving it up in pieces. But I'm dedicated.
That is a commitment, and those are not small machines. So that's good to know.
Oh, and one fun story, speaking of our founders here, Max helped me move the one into the office in Somerville. And it's a particularly a little bigger than a normal one, extra heavy. Max and 2 other friends helped me do it. And I watched Max almost lose a thumb, like getting it up the staircase step by step. And I was right there when I saw it come down like this close to his thumb. So thank you for not losing a thumb and for helping me move it.
That's what I'm here for.
That wasn't the outcome for sure. So I'd be remiss not to start at the top, right? So first and foremost, where did the concept and the idea of OWL come from? And I'm going to kick it to you, Mark, first.
Sure. So the quick version of the story is that I became a cross-country remote worker in 2012. I was working for a startup, a small robotics startup on the West Coast, and I was living in the Boston area, as I do now. And that remote experience was really interesting for me. A lot of things worked really well. The company was super cool. I learned a ton. One thing that did not work were group video calls, and I was on those almost every day as a remote participant. And we tried to find all different solutions. We bought all different tech, tried all different ways to make it so that I could actually participate in the meeting, because the problem was I couldn't really hear well. I couldn't see who was talking. I couldn't follow the conversation. I couldn't see any body language. And so I couldn't figure out how to get myself into the conversation. And I always felt this thing in my mind about not wanting to be a burden by asking people to repeat themselves or to interrupt the flow awkwardly, but also not wanting to not be able to participate and lose that value that I wanted to offer to the company. And so one day the magical moment happened. After trying all these different high-tech solutions, we were just on a regular old call with a MacBook computer, sitting in the middle of a conversation on a stool that happened to have a swivel top. And one of my colleagues on the West Coast just started swiveling that stool top around to point the camera at each person as they spoke. And that was the aha moment. I was in Boston at the time, and I just immediately felt how much better the meeting was, how much more inclusive it was to me, how much better I could participate. And I looked at that problem, and the year was roughly 2013, 2014. And I thought, hey, the technology exists to package this up and do it in an automated way that will be better than what that person can do, and also relieve that person of having to do that work, because there's no doubt that every meeting cannot afford to have a camera person in it dedicated to the folks who aren't in the room. So that's really what kicked off the initial idea, and then that of course kickstarted the company.
Yeah, that's great. And I would be remiss not to share that both Mark and Max are roboticists as well. So this was definitely rooted in understanding that, seeing this concept that there wasn't a way to automate it, which I think is sometimes unique to that kind of mindset and that skill. So Max, I mean, I think we can probably make an inference here, but why the name OWL?
Sure, yeah. The name's actually quite simple, but there's a whole iceberg worth of story behind how long it took to get there. The reason why we picked the name, though, is that owls have great vision, they have great hearing, and they're personified as wise. And so we thought these were, the hallmarks of the Meeting Owl product, that it has this 360 lens. Owls can nearly swivel their necks in near 360. They can hear mice scurry around in the woods, they can see them really well. So the Meeting Owl embodies all those elements when it's looking at the people in the room, deciding who to focus on, when to bring people in, when to leave people out, all for the benefit of that remote employee. And so smart, great hearing, great vision, and intelligence.
And very memorable too, which is great. So for those in the call, some of you, I think, just looking at chat, have experienced and worked with Owl Labs products before, specifically the Meeting Owl product line. It hoots as you power it up, which for me, as being a brand marketer, I love it because it's memorable and it's unique and it's differentiated. So no fighting in the room here, but be honest, whose idea was it to come up with that kind of memorable hoot moment as it powers up?
All right, I'll start off by saying I honestly don't know, but what I do know for sure is that this is a little secret inside information. The hoot is actually made by one of our engineers who, I looked this up today to get it right. He was the third person that we hired at Owl Labs, and he actually made that hoot a recording of himself making that hooting sound with his mouth. And if you ever get the chance to meet him live, he will do it live on demand. And I'm certain we did not ask him to do that, because I did not know he had those kinds of skills, even though I had known him for years. And so I'd give a little shout out to Peter Side, who is the sound of the hoot. And it was definitely he took that initiative to make that sound. I don't know, Max, if you remember if he came up with the idea to even have a hoot himself, or if one of us suggested it'd be cool if it hooted. I really can't remember.
No, I can certify that Mark really can't remember, but I also can't either. I think this guy just took initiative, and we loved, the creativity and the output, so it stuck.
I love it. And too bad we don't have Peter to give us a hoot. Maybe we'll keep that for next time for sure, either introing or exiting us. So for those in the call that you either have worked at a startup, have started your own company, the entrepreneurial process and startup journey can be really grueling, as we all know, right? And sometimes you think you have this eureka, the best idea ever that never takes off, and then sometimes you're not quite sure if your idea is that great. You don't have a ton of confidence in it. For both of you, being co-founders and starting this company, right, and to see where we are today. What was a moment, or not the moment, but a moment perhaps, where you looked at each other and you're like, holy smokes, we might be onto something here. Like this could actually work. I just think that would be kind of interesting to share with the crew here today.
Yeah, I think one of the beliefs we had was, since we're going to be selling ultimately an enterprise product, we thought that companies could afford one, but they have multiple conference rooms. And so the real proof of product market fit would be when they come back and buy more. And, we launched, we started selling in, I believe, July of 2017. And very quickly we saw that customers were in fact coming back and buying more. And to me, that was the first telltale of like, hey, we've got something here. We just need to double down and focus and just hold on tight and drive this growth.
And I think for me, it was a similar moment or a similar experience, but a little bit earlier in time. And that is when, just before we launched the original Meeting Owl, we did a beta program, and we decided that we were going to use that beta, the results of the beta program, to decide whether it was time to launch or if we still had more work to do. And there were about 20 people in that beta program, which is not a huge number. But you know, we're a very, very small startup. There's only so much we could support at the time, just getting started. And I remember going onto Wikipedia and other such websites on the internet and reading up about the binomial distribution and figuring out like what are the probabilities with only 20 people in your group that the results are going to sort of give you a good indicator of whether you were ready or not. And binomial because it's a yes, no answer. What we were going to ask those 20-ish beta testers is, hey, do you want to give this product back to us now, or do you want to pay us for it and keep it as yours? So it was a yes, no answer. And what I learned from reading around was, and doing some spreadsheets and figuring things out, was that with 20 people, you can actually get a pretty decent idea. You're not going to know exactly how things will go, but you'll actually have pretty good directional indicator. And so for me, the moment was when we asked that question, and the vast majority of the people said, yeah, we'd like to pay you for this and keep using it. And I was like, oh wow, like it was a scary moment when we asked that question. Yeah, well, more excited. I think it would have most people didn't want to, and then I'd be like, oh boy, now we have to go back. We clearly haven't made something that has enough value yet. And so for me, that was the indicator that we really had something that met the needs of the market, and that was really exciting.
Yeah, and that is a scary question to ask people, like, do you like me?
Circle yes or no. Yeah, I mean, also too, it proved to you that, it was time to double down and really lean into the idea, which was not that you both weren't committed then at that moment, but that this was something, right? Which is really exciting. So the question for you, Mark, like, do you own a crystal ball? And I think I asked you guys this at one of my first all hands when I first joined Owl Labs almost 4 years ago. How did you know like hybrid work or remote work was going to take off? And I know that we've had this really massive outlier global event called a pandemic, right? That really fast tracked us to where we are today. But as you said, it was 2012 that you were working as a remote worker, which I think by then, that if you look at the numbers, they were probably very slim and very low of how many people were actually engaging in remote work. So when you all started to embark on this, part of it was that the workforce movement had to move towards this direction as well. So how did you know, or were there any factors that helped you feel comfortable that this was the way that the world was moving?
Yeah, I mean, like the truth is I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have the experience of life, I guess, and maybe a mind that's open to seeing opportunities and seeing how things are changing a little bit. And I'll say, when I took that job in 2012, I didn't actually believe that remote working could really work for a long, sustained period of time. And I was definitely very nervous taking that job. But I also was excited about the company and wanted to give it a go. So that was sort of the leap of faith without, I guess, really truly having the faith, if I'm honest about it. But that experience opened my eyes, because what I found in the 2 years I was with that company was that remote work really did work for the most part. And there were key technologies at that point between, put your mind in 2012 to 2014. It's hard to remember where things were. But key pieces for me was that there were shared documents like Google Docs. I don't remember what it was called back then. They're always changing their names, but that technology existed where you could work on a document real time with other people, not just one other person, but groups of people. That was key. There was chat. So Slack did not exist in 2012, but there were other companies that provided the same sort of instant messaging. And that was really, really important. And then the final thing was a combination of internet speeds and video conferencing. So video conferencing software also existed. It had existed for many years before that, but the quality of the internet had gotten to a point where you could actually do video conferencing and it would work at least one-on-one for those one-on-one calls. And experiencing that and living it is really, you know, tugged at me and said, hey, this remote work thing is real. It's not going to be every job, not in every company, not in every location, but it's a real thing that actually works. It's not just a joke of some sort or something that you can only do for a couple of months. It's real, it's sustainable. And you know, again, saw this one big gap to me was these group meetings. That's where the technology didn't exist to really make that remote work a real possibility. But those other components were there, and I could only imagine them, each of those things that I mentioned, getting better and stronger, and other tools being added into the mix, like the Meeting Owl itself, but lots of other digital and hardware-based solutions that would make remote working even more successful. And so I was a really strong believer that the world was going to move that way. And it was moving that way. It was more of a gradual pace, but it was happening. And that is really what you know, kicked off Owl Labs and Next and myself dedicating ourselves to making this hybrid work. But then, of course, the pandemic came, and what it did was it kind of opened everybody else's eyes to that experience that I had, that video conferencing really did work, that there are these other tools that would make remote work possible and hybrid work possible and distributed teams. And, you know, that's been, you know, just really accelerated that growth of hybrid and remote work. But again, just that experience that I had made it clear to me that there was a future that was going to include that kind of working as a commonplace thing instead of a weird thing that I was doing in 2012.
No, that's really helpful. That's great context. So to bring it back to the products just a little bit here, since we are doing a hybrid tech showcase today, Max, tell us what you think. You know, we saw a few demos, right, where we were talking about different features and how the products work, but you know, what makes the Meeting Owl 3 or the Meeting Owl product line, you know, exciting and differentiated kind of in this category, in this communications category in general?
Yeah, it's every day I come in, I'm excited about seeing the progress our software and hardware teams are making on building a wonderful product with a great experience, all in service of helping remote people feel engaged, which is the whole purpose of putting hardware in the room. It's for their benefit largely. With the Meeting Owl 3 specifically, the thing that gets me most excited is that the accuracy of our attention system has improved by 58%. That's a huge step change in performance. You know, being able to identify the right person at the right time at any given distance, you know, within limits. I think we're seated in the 18 by 16 foot room, about 5 by 5.5 meters for our European audience. So being able to detect people in the room wherever they sit, if they're partially occluded, if they shouldn't be shown, if it's an object that shouldn't be shown, making that attention system more accurate is really an exciting part of the Meeting Owl 3. The snappiness with which we respond to people speaking. So it's really important that when we first launched the Meeting Owl, one of the points of feedback was, hey, this thing takes a little while to react to a person in the room. And if you were to take a first generation Owl with the first generation software and compare it to what the Meeting Owl 3 does, it's just light speed worth the difference. It's appropriately fast, not too fast. We don't want to make people feel like they're watching a bad TV show or heist with lots of cutaway scenes. So there's a bit of an art and balance, but we walked that line quite nicely as we improved that performance. So 4 times faster reaction speed, which is fantastic work by the team. And one of the features that we've been working on that's embodied in the Meeting Owl and 3, all of the Meeting Owl 3s that we're putting on the market, is this Owl Connect technology. And so Meeting Owl itself provides this great inclusive meeting experience for hybrid teams as a standalone device. It has, an 18-foot or 5.5 meter microphone pickup range. It has a really comfortable camera experience out to over 3 meters. But you have rooms of varying sizes. Some rooms are larger, and you want to extend that experience into those larger rooms. And the way we enable that is by having the 2 owls in the room. They can wirelessly connect together, and then they can share their audio video streams between each other and decide what is the best angle right now in this instance of the conversation to show for the benefit of that remote employee. So we pair them together, extends the coverage into larger spaces. It brings the microphones closer to everybody in the room, brings the speaker closer to everybody in the room. And it's super simple to set up, and it works across all video conferencing platforms because, as always, we don't want to encumber the setup experience. We want that to be as easy as plugging in a USB cable. So we work overtime to make sure the software is easy to use and super inclusive when it's deployed in your conference rooms, regardless of what space you put the product in. So those are the 3 things I'm excited about: the detection accuracy, the snappiness of the attention system, and the Owl Connect technology that we're bringing to market.
Yeah, that's really well put. So we're getting close to time here. I want to kind of, be a little bit future forward thinking and looking. So what is, without spilling too many beans here, what's, next for Owl? What are you all, kind of excited about? And it can be, trends across the industry as a whole. It can also just be, specifically for Owl, but what are you guys, bullish or excited about?
Well, I'm still excited. It's amazing to me that people have heard about this company and products. So kudos to you, Kristen, and the team. I think there's a lot of conference rooms out there in the world. I think we have a great technology that can serve those companies and those rooms really well. I get excited when I walk into a room of a company that, and I find an Owl is there. So I'm excited about our market expansion. I'm excited about pleasing customers in new regions, learning about their needs, their specific needs, and bringing that back home to improve the product. Hybrid work is here to stay. Most of our meetings are going to be on video versus some of our meetings pre-pandemic were on video. So there's a ever-growing need to capture the information in the room and present it comfortably to people on the remote end.
And I think one thing that I'm really excited about is a little bit of the unknown, and that is the unknown of what offices and the future of this new hybrid work really looks like in detail. I think we all know that hybrid is going to, is already and is going to be the norm, but hybrid means a lot of different things to different people and a lot of different scenarios. So I'm really excited actually to see what sort of the next phase of the office and company work life looks like, and then adapting and adding to our products in order to meet the needs that are coming. And so if I think about that, I will say the very concrete thing I'm excited about is the Owl Connect. As Max said, that's already in all of these Meeting Owl 3s, but that's really just the beginning of it. But the reason I'm excited about that is, again, if we go back to my experience, being a remote worker in 2012, it was all about having, just that one computer on the stool in the center of a group of people. And that really solved the pain point of being that one remote worker. But now as we go into this future, it's not just, one thing in the middle of the circle that's going to give the best experience. And that's why we made Owl Connect, so that you can connect up these different components. And right now it's, 2 meeting owls, as Max talked about, to better cover a room. But we also have that whiteboard owl, and that whiteboard owl uses the same technology to tether in wirelessly with that Meeting Owl 3 on the table and bring your whiteboard into the conversation. And you can imagine going to, different building blocks of different types of cameras, different angles, all around this idea of sort of showing the right thing at the right time. And all that ties back to our core mission, which is ultimately to make hybrid meetings as natural and effective as in-person meetings. And while the Meeting Owl 3 is fantastic, it alone does not accomplish that mission. We still have a lot of work to do to get to that ultimate goal of, again, having that hybrid meeting be as effective, as natural as an in-person meeting. There's so much to do there. And I think Owl Connect is an enormous part of that. And so really a big part of what I'm excited about in the near-term growth is making that Owl Connect stronger and stronger, better and better, having more pieces that can hook up to it so that you can put these Lego blocks together for every one of your rooms and have it right size. You don't have to buy, a very expensive, oversized piece of equipment for a small huddle room. And likewise, you don't have to use something that is too limited to cover that big boardroom, but that you can snap together whatever these pieces are. And as Max said, snap them together really easily, not in the sort of the older way where you need an entire IT team to really support the technology on a daily basis, but something that's a little closer to that consumer product experience where almost anybody can set it up and have it work without needing a lot of intervention. So that's what I look forward to.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's all about, dependent on need and customer need versus us telling them what they need. They can determine, flexibility is the term, right, for workplace policies, but I think flexible technology is super innovative, and that's what we're, as a company leaning into. So a lot more to come from us on that front. So I think we're at time. I thought we'd have some opportunity for some Q&A, but if you have any questions, send them along. We'll be sure to answer and follow up. But just wanted to say, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We know time is limited, so we're thrilled that you're able to spend some time with us here today. We hope you found the sessions insightful. If you have any questions, as I said, we saw a lot coming through in the Q&A. We did our best to answer, but we will certainly follow up with more. And if you missed any parts of today's session, we'll be sending a link with the full recording so you can have it, you can share it. And again, check out our website, owllabs.com for any updates. You can sign up for, our newsletters just to learn, more about company updates and things that we're up to and company announcements. And we're also on social where we share a lot of things as well. So thank you again. Have a great day and we appreciate it.